told by the group that's here today that there's been a great amount of experience that you guys have brought to this sector of our industry, which is all about, but I don't want to make it exclusively about older adults, because I think there's a tremendous opportunity for our industry to pivot just a little bit and get some incredible results. So this morning I'm mindful of what one of my favorite politicians of all time said, I love to learn, but I hate to be taught. That was Winston Churchill. So I'm hoping that we can make this more of a conversation. There's some things I'd like to get through, but I'm looking forward to hearing what your experience has been and what questions you might have. Because one of the most important things that I do in my job is that I provide confidence to people. And confidence comes from understanding and experiencing things. So, in that regard, you could call me a con man. So that's sort of what I do. If you boil it down, just provide confidence to the people that I work with. I'm joined today by Chelsea Richardson, who's been with our organization after a year. First year we started, and Eric from our Santa Monica studio. And Chelsea does everything that represents our image for the organization. She oversees our entitlement process. We have 10,000 acres in 3 states at any given time worth of entitlement design guidelines that we're doing, like the cannery in Davis and some other things. Just as a point of reference, I'm tremendously proud of her, and all this is possible because she does what she does so well for all of us. So thank you for being here. So 10 years ago, Chelsea, one of the other young leaders in my organization, came to me and said, we want to do this pro bono project for a not-for-profit organization. I said, there's 2 things that I'm having trouble with in that sentence. Pro bono and not-for-profit. So I said, well, tell me a little bit more. And they said, it's for Eschaton. They're a 40-year older adult service provider. They do CCRCs, memory care, skilled nursing, independent living, assisted living, and they want to do this new program. And the business part of my architecture mind said, this is going to be time-consuming and expensive, because a not-for-profit thinks that they look at the world a lot differently than we do, right? Who's worked with not-for-profits before, right? And they do some wonderful things, but they also have a process that, for me, I'm not very smart, I'm kind of lazy, so how quickly can we get this done? 10 years ago, this started. So I started to think about one of the people that had the most amount of impact on my life, the first older adult that I was really close to, and that was my grandmother. I'm from a big Italian family, so your grandmother lives with you. My parents owned a bakery, so daycare for us was sweeping floors from the time I could stand. My grandmother worked at the bakery, but what she did more than anything else is that she cared about me, she loved me. We have a big family, and I was the only boy in an Italian family. You know what that means? You better take care of that one. So that's the way they looked at it. Is it fair? Probably not, but I sure benefited from it. I got really close to Grammy, and we spent a lot of time together, right? Because my parents were working most of the time, and she kind of filled that gap. Well, fast forward a couple of years when I was a late teenager, and Grammy, this wonderful woman that raised 5 kids alone because her husband died of pneumonia when her youngest was a year old during the Depression. Tough lady, but really loving lady. So I watched this independent woman who cooked for us and cleaned for us and sewed for us and took care of us and loved us more than anything else. She fell and broke her hip. So she went from being an active participant in the family to needing us to take care of her. Her mind was great until she died when she was 95, and she died in a convalescent home, which is what they call them. And so this time, when I watched my grandmother physically deteriorate from a simple fall, and the dignity that she lost as a result of needing to be carried in her wheelchair, up a flight of stairs. So I thought about the not-for-profit conversation, and I thought about my life, and I thought about where I want to be and what influences I want to have and what mark I want to make on the things that happen as I go through my life. Because what happens with all of us is that what we have in common is that we're all getting older, and that we're not leaving this life, we're not leaving this world alive, right? We've all got that in common. But the other thing that we have in common is that our future is bigger than our past for all of us. That's just the way people think. That's the way that we are wired. And I started looking at my family, and we're kind of weird. I've been married to my wife for 25 years. We have 4 kids. The oldest is 19 and the youngest is 5. There's about 9 years in between the formerly youngest and the newest youngest. And I thought about, with the newest youngest, I thought about how we take care of these kids, right? And by the way, my wife will never believe me when I say trust me again, ever. I can never say that. It's the longest 6-foot walk that I never made at night. So anyway, when I looked at how we raised these kids, they all lived in the house that I designed for my family. And you think about basic things in life. You know, the mountaintop experiences, that's not every day. We're here bathing our kids every day. We're taking care of people. How many here have been impacted by an older adult that has had some issue, mobility, memory issue? How many people in this room have been impacted by that? Yeah, I mean, almost everybody. So, and we think that that's the only impact, but we look at how we kind of just get our kids bathed at the end of the night. And I thought, you know, I'm thinking about it as I'm bringing this new one into the bathtub, and it's like waterboarding our kids to get the soap out of their hair. It's like, this will just take a minute. And I'm thinking that, you know what? There's a better way that we can live. So this Livable Design program that I'm going to talk to you about today, it's not just for older adults. And in fact, we have communities that have 1,000 homes in them, and they're non-age targeted, and all the homes in the community are Livable Design compliant. And what this does is these are not really genius kinds of things, but we've got 2 huge kind of bubbles in people that live in America right now. The Great Generation, it's less than 60 million people, right? And we're losing them at an alarming rate every day. There's people that went through the Depression and World War II. We've got the Silent Generation, it's a few more million. But the big bubble is baby boomers. We all know it's 87 million people. And then the next huge bubble is millennials, which is over 90 million young people in America. So this first time and last time home buyers, that's the majority of my practice. That, you know, we call the bookmarks that represents the majority of who needs the most attention in terms of housing right now. So as we work through this process of Livable Design with Eschaton, our not-for-profit co-creator of Livable Design, we looked at a study that was done by AARP about 11 years ago. And what this survey said was that 88% of all people over the age of 65 want to age in place. They want their house that they buy when they're in their 60s and 70s to be their last house. They want to be connected to the same cultural, social, and recreational amenities that they had, right, for most of their life. You know, shopping, recreation, church, friends, all those things. They want to be knitted into the community, so they don't want to move somewhere else. And then there's a very storied report that was done by an active adult provider that shall remain nameless, Del Webb, but they did this report, and what they found, they did it internally, and I don't think they put it on their website. What they found was, do you know how many people want to live in an active adult, age-targeted community? Anybody know? Yes? Well, yes.
50%.
Well, what's your number? 0. Yeah, right? It's 12%. 12% of all older adults that are age qualified want to live in that kind of a community. So our colleague and partner that has 40 of these facilities throughout Northern California, Eschaton, they looked at these 2 statistics. This is kind of the cornerstone for everything that we did. I don't want to live in an active adult community, number 1, and I want to age in place. Well, we rebranded that. We call it living in place because everybody wants to live, but nobody wants to age. So this living in place model, which as soon as I say that, you guys feel how it just changed your mindset, how you look at how we can deliver results to this market. So that was a big part of what we wanted to advance relative to this program. People want to live in place. They want their home to morph over time. And so we spent time with gerontologists, of course, all the experts at Eschaton. They have like, how many employees they have, Chelsea? 1,800, 2,000 employees. and we spoke with some of the leaders that deliver services, and of course the AERP sat on our advisory board and met with us to talk about some of the things that they think are significant issues. And what Eschaton realized is that they couldn't house in traditional facilities all the older adults that are going to need services. So designing this model to be able to accommodate this new demographic was something that was really important. So we looked at universal design. Has everybody heard of universal design? So universal design was thought up like when I was in college, a bunch of hippies that were like, yeah, it'd be really cool if everybody just lived like this, you know, and make it really easy for people. So one of the principles of universal design is your appliances shouldn't hurt you. If you're a spec writer or a purchasing agent, how do you find that? So we looked at the 7 principles of universal design, and they're pretty good, but they don't have any substance. You can't build anything from them. Everybody in this room has got to get results, right? We build stuff. There's something to show at the end of the day for what we do. We get stuff done. And this universal design thing, you know, they've made some inroads. For example, you know, the Heinz company has universal design ketchup, right? That's the big things that, you know, you can get your hand on that goes like that. And there's some other things. You know, fast forward the manufacturers, you can go down to Home Depot and buy fall-rated towel bars. So for all intents and purposes, this towel bar, if you put a little blocking there, it's fall-rated. It's like a grab bar, right? So industry is catching on that these things are valuable to their consumers. And what we haven't done as an industry is we haven't aligned to find the right ones and to write a program. So that's what Livable Design was all about. Some of the specifics on Livable Design. All plugs outlets are like this far from the floor. When you get, it's inconvenient to, you know, I mean, I like to get down, but not to put a plug in the wall. So Livable Design, it's 18 inches. That plug is 18 inches off the floor. Switches are standard at this height, and Livable Design, they're at this height. So if you're in a wheelchair or in a stroller, or if you're a little kid, you can actually turn the light on. So these are very practical things. 0 threshold entries, right? So that you can, there has to be one entry into the home that's got a 0 threshold entry. The front door, a patio door with a safe path to it, or the garage with a 0 threshold entry. Not 0 step, but 0 threshold. Let me tell you how important this is. My former business partner, his 88-year-old mom moved into an independent living cottage that we did not design, and there was a step. It was a 5-inch step from the kitchen to the garage. She'd lost her husband a year before, and so she had just moved into this place. She was in the place for less than 2 months. She went from the kitchen into the garage. She fell, she broke her hip. She went into the hospital, she never came out. She died in the hospital. That's how significant this stuff is. This is like a big deal. We have this saying in our office, your house shouldn't hurt you. The things that happen in your house, I mean the things that are built into your house, they shouldn't hurt you. So the structural things that we do as part of Livable Design, every door is 3 feet wide. We've done active adult communities where the pantry door is 3 feet wide. The powder room door is 3 feet wide. The strike is a minimum of 8 up to 18 inches so that when you close the door, you don't have to go like this in order to get around it. It's so gracious when you see this stuff built. It doesn't look institutional. And let me give you 2 examples. Have you ever stayed at a place like the Hampton Inn and checked in late at night? And what room do you get? Get the handicap room, right? Do you feel empowered and independent by hanging out? It's awful. You have these things that you look at the shadows in the middle of the night when you get up, it's like, it's like a bad B movie, right? It looks like it's going to eat you. You know, these ugly bars, I mean, you feel like you're in prison. What I would imagine prison was like. So it's just gnarly. And then, have you ever stayed at like a Ritz-Carlton and gotten the handicap suite? Anybody? It's a lot different, let me tell you. That's the mindset for Livable Design. So this is what Livable Design has it needed to do. So I'm going to go through a couple of core components of it. But this is the cornerstone. It needed to be adaptable, it needed to be affordable, and it needed to be beautiful. Because a thing of beauty is a joy forever, but ugly just hurts every day. We don't want eye bruises with what we do. It's like you look at something and you go, yeah, it's functional, but that couldn't be part of it. So I mentioned before grab bars. So there's manufacturers now that we can match the grab bars aesthetically to the plumbing fixtures. That's one of the core components of livable design. Showers that don't have a threshold, and so it just seamlessly kind of rolls in. We have can I say who the client is that's doing the community in Northern California? We're going to talk about it. So Lennar, we have 1,200 homes. We've done 14 models for the first 600, and every one of them, even the 1,200 square foot unit, has a roll-in shower. So what's my point? Well, if they can do it, I think that the rest of our industry can probably figure out. But what is really cool about it is that it looks good, it functions well. So if you're in a wheelchair or walker, or you push your stroller in to hose down your kid, your dog, or if you're hungover, you don't stub your toe. That's the big advantage. So, not the last part, that was only. So, the goal that I have is to see that there's 1 million of these homes within the next 3 years that are out there and built throughout the country. Because annually we do about 800,000 new homes, right? And then if you roll in all the other stuff, the skilled nursing, assisted living, memory care, and independent living that's being done in the country, I don't think that that's a ridiculous number. And right now we have, how many are in process? 6,000, right? And so that are in process of getting built, that will be built in the next couple of years. A friend of mine that I was on a panel with, he asked me, he said, it's 25 years from now, Jeff, what would you like to see as part of what you've done, your legacy in the profession? And I said, I'd like to see multi-generational living. I would like to no longer see homogenous, ubiquitous, shrink-wrapped communities. Because right now in our industry, do you know how many, anybody know the statistic of what the percentage of builders that are building for a certain market? It's kind of a nebulous question, but 75% of production home builders are building for what percentage of the market? 75%. Anybody want to guess what percentage of the market out there? Well, you're aggressive. It's 30%. 15 years ago, it was 45%. So the number of builders that are building for an increasingly smaller market has changed dramatically. So.
And what is that market?
Oh, that is first move up, second move up, family housing, right? It's an increasingly smaller number of people that are buying those kinds of homes. And you overlay with that everything that happened during the recession from an economic standpoint, people being buried in their homes, and they don't want that house anymore. I don't know how to be any more blunt about it than that, but that buyer is going away. You look at the two bookends that I was talking about, first time and last time buyers, you've got all these people in between that they're either buried in their house, they're not moving from their neighborhood, they're not in a position to make a significant change in their life. And so that is something that I encourage our industry to understand and to kind of build in more multi-generational components to the communities that we do. When we do multi-generational kinds of communities, because that statistic I told you about before, that only 12% of people want to live in age-qualified communities that are of the age where they could. I'll tell you that starting with the oldest demographic, the Great Generation, from where they live in a facility or an institutional kind of environment, a nursing home, assisted living, that model in California is still really prevalent in skilled nursing. Did you guys know that? Has everybody heard of OSHPD? Anybody not heard of OSHPD? So in California, it's harder to get a new skilled nursing facility approved than a nuclear power plant. You can get a nuclear power plant approved in California easier than skilled nursing. There's been like 3 skilled nursing facilities, standalone skilled nursing facilities that have been done in California in like the last 10 years, right, Chelsea? Mm-hmm. So the ones that are out there, they're housing of last choice for frail elders. That's the nursing home. That's the skilled nursing model that is that's prevalent right now. What's happening is that assisted living is taking up the slack because older adults are healthier, they're living longer, they're taking responsibility for their own care. So this paternal model that was set up for the Great Generation, and if you say to somebody in the Great Generation, be down in line for lunch at 11:30, they're queuing up at 11:15. They know how to follow orders, right? They know how to pay attention. You say that to somebody that is silent generation or even more so a baby boomer, and they'll say, you know what, I just took a little blue pill, I'm going to chill in the room for a while with my wife. When we're ready, we'll call for room service. Thank you very much. Can you imagine these buildings that have been done 40 years ago and that same model that's kind of being replicated today? So the model that we use today is very much of a hospitality model for older adults. So this mindset, we worked on this community in, We worked on this community in Portland, which is like the epicenter for older adult stuff. There's so many families there that are 2, 3, 4, 5 generations of older adult providers in skilled nursing, memory care, and assisted living. We did this very large project in Tualatin, just outside of Portland, within the urban boundary. And this was for an operator developer that has 35 buildings throughout the United States. He's 4th generation. His father had his own company. His grandmother had her own company, and her mother had board and care. That's how ingrained it is in this family. And so we did a CCRC, a congregate care retirement community, which is a buy-in model, which is really tough and egregious. And so he wanted to do a CCRC, skilled nursing, memory care, assisted living, independent living, and I get them all. And so we did this building on 5 acres, and it was how many beds? 250, 260, 3-story, and really cool. And then I took them on a tour of the demonstration home, the Livable design demonstration home that Eschaton built, because we felt like we needed to show how this stuff, kind of worked. And after our meeting, after our tour, he took me aside and he goes, "I'm really mad at you right now." I go, "Well, that's great. That's why I'm in business, so thank you very much. That's what I do." He goes, "No, I'm really upset with you because I'm going to have to change the entire design of what you've already designed for us. We're about 60% done with the project." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I can't imagine why anybody would want to live in an institutionally based model for independent living when they could live in one of these cottages." So he bought 7 acres of adjacent property, and we put in 40 cottages. And then he looked at how that sort of shaped up, and he goes, "That's not good enough." So we added more of these cottages because he believes that that is absolutely the future of independent living. Now, if you're an operator that runs one of these buildings and you have 200 beds, 150 beds in one of these buildings, and you have 50 to 100 residents that don't really need your services, that's what they tell you, but guess what? They all sign up for them. You've just amortized your costs over another 50 or 100 people. And you've created this interaction, so you've got this older adult, multi-generational kind of living. If you have one spouse that has cognitive issues, they can live in the main building and in the lodge, and mom or dad can live independently, and they can still overlap. I mean, what a wonderful thing to be able to do. Kids can go and see grandma at the cottage or grandpa at the cottage, and then they can get together for meals and recreation in the main building. So this is what we call an MLRC. This is what it's kind of morphed into. And MLRC is a multi-level retirement community where it goes from no care to a lot of care and kind of everything in between. So what happens is that people move in independent living, and they end up using a lot of the services they don't think they will, because the way that the services are delivered is really, really gracious. I mean, it's like a nice lodge, and that's our model for this. So the first one that we did in Portland a number of years ago, our client had just done skilled nursing up to that point. And so they wanted to soften it. So we took it as far as we could with the budget that we had. And that building was built for $137 a square foot. That building. That includes everything except FF&E, fixtures, furniture, and equipment. But landscaping, paving, the flagpole, all that for $137 a square foot. And so we were pretty proud of the fact that we could get this built and we could change from an institutional to a hospitality-based model. Fast forward a year or two, Clovis, California, our client, a different client this time, and they really had embraced, they travel a lot, and they have 60 memory care and assisted living buildings they own and or manage throughout the country. And they said, we really think that there's a better way. And Greg, my friend and client that owns the company, and I'm a partner in 8 of these buildings, he said, we really want to take it up a notch, and I'm going to freak you out. And I said, I don't know if you could do that. We put a bistro in there, we put a bar in there, we put, on every one of the 3 floors, we've got a hub of primary activity, so it gets people moving on different floors within the building. And then our client was able to buy, Greg was able to buy some land adjacent to that. We put a freestanding memory care building, and 40 cottages. So we've created this MLRC kind of model again. By the way, these cottages rent for, anybody want to guess? Manny, you can't weigh in on this, that's not fair. Anybody want to guess what these places rent for a month? These independent living cottages are 1,150 square feet, 1-car garage, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, livable, design compliant. Say again?
Where's that?
Doesn't matter, it's all the same price.
2,500?
On average, $4 to $5 a square foot. With limited services, maybe 1 meal a day. As opposed to the national average for rental, which is $1.25, Annie? For market rate apartments? $1.25 square foot?
Yeah, probably about that.
Yeah. So, and they cost about $90 to $100 a square foot to build. So they're a little bit more expensive than a single-family detached home, but they're a lot smaller. So that's where the price comes in. That's how significant this is. So the next building that we did is in Fresno, that hotbed of architecture in the Central Valley, and our client there wanted to do what you would do. The Clovis project is called Carmel Village, because a lot of people have a positive association from the Fresno area with the coast, so we wanted to kind of draw that in. The next one was also coastally influenced, and it's called Kingston Bay, and it was a Jamaican theme, of course. I mean, what else would you do in Fresno? In Fresno, yeah. I can tell you it does stand out, and it doesn't look as weird as I thought it would. But we try to be distinctive. When you go just a little bit past distinctive, you know where you get? Weird. You get weird, right? So this community, which all these communities, they were stabilized within 18 to 24 months, and we're all doing pretty well. The independent living part has been the most successful, believe it or not, and the memory care, which is always the most successful. That fills up the memory care. Yeah.
Do you find that there are more single people moving in, or are they couples downsizing and moving in?
Yeah, it's, you know what the ratio of single women is to men over the age of 75? Annie? It's like 7 to 1.
Yeah.
Like 7 to 1. Chelsea and I toured this independent living apartment project, and there's one guy who's sitting there, and he was in a walker. I know, right? You know where this is going? He's got 5 women around him, and he's hitting on Chelsea. Right? The guy was like 13 years old, you know, and he was having the time of his life. So that's it's mostly single women in most of these. Men are beginning to live longer, but it's predominantly women. Annie and I were talking about this a moment ago. The memory care buildings, and to a slightly lesser extent, the assisted living buildings, we don't design those for the residents, although we do everything we can for them, right? But what we're really marketing for is the family member that's going to bring that person, especially to the memory care building, because memory care is so need-based that you try and take care of your relative that has cognitive issues, and you can do it for a few months, you might do it for a year or two, but you're loading up the car on a Saturday morning, and grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, that person is going to be in a facility by the end of the weekend. And what happens is they drive around, right? They take a tour of a couple of these places, and they find the one where it's got the lowest threshold of guilt. And so the ones that we do, that's what we work to do. We try and make it like a beautiful lodge. And who's
that decision maker?
The decision maker is that family member, younger family member.
Daughter or daughter-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And that woman is between the ages of 40 and 60. Yep, that's who we're marketing towards, right? And what we want to do is just eliminate all guilt. What we've done in some of these is we have wine tastings once a month in memory care buildings, because that's one of the only reasons the family members will come. They'll come for something social like that. But what happens is that the visitation drops off. The other thing that I want to talk to you guys about, I've been in the home building industry my entire life, like a lot of people in this room. When I started doing the work in the older adult world assisted living, memory care buildings, there's this halo effect. And all of a sudden, you're not the greedy developer, but you're like this little angel that comes into town. We got a project approved in Santa Rosa in 11 months. The cannery in the Republic of Davis, 7 square miles of city surrounded by reality, we got it approved in 18 months, and I think a big part of it was livable design compliant. And one of the loudest of the 12 agencies that you have to present to in Davis is the Seniors Council, as they're always the loudest. You know, they've got nothing to do but talk about what's going on in their life. And so they were so vocal and so outspoken that they helped us get the project approved. It's a market rate community, farm to fork community that is 100% livable design compliant. So we've got first time buyer townhomes up to medium sized compact lot, larger lot, and condominiums, and everything is livable design compliant. So we did 3-story townhomes. New home company let us do the barn, the welcome home center, and the toughest of these, which was the fee simple townhomes, which are livable design compliant. And so my point in saying this is that the agencies are beginning to recognize the impact that this has, but our industry is starting to recognize the impact that this has on all the generations. So I want to show you one other project that is, we'll go to Heritage. Mm-hmm. So this is a project that we are doing for Lennar in El Dorado Hills, California. It's the best-selling project, and it has been for 16 months in Northern California. I think they're selling something like 24 units a month. There's 3 different product line and 14 models. And it's got a couple of clubhouses, and it's livable design light, if you will. But there's a 0 threshold entry, 0 threshold for the showers. All the doors are 3 feet wide. All the hallways and the widths around the kitchen islands are to be able to accommodate a mobility assistive device or even a stroller, right? For those of us baby boomers that are still having kids, and there's a few of us out there. So it's incredibly accommodating, and it's also seamless. You don't see this stuff, these livable design components. If you look at something in the demonstration home, we used to do this exercise, and Chelsea and I did about 120 tours, and we would say to people, can you point out, there's 12 livable design components in the space that you can see. Can you find any of them? And people couldn't. I mean, they're just seamless. The big challenge is, and this is why I'm so excited that we got to partner up with Eschaton, is because our industry, we have to show people the way. It's difficult to go to a team in a builder's office and say, we want to do this livable design stuff if they've never seen it done and if there isn't a program to follow. And so the 130 components of livable design, we've articulated them all. We have appliances and details and features that you can find within the resources that are available. And I bet you're wondering how much it costs to buy into the livable design program. Does anybody have a question? Is anybody wondering how much it costs to buy in? It's free. You can go onto the website, you have access to this. It's an open source. That's how passionate we are about seeing that this stuff gets done. Those 1 million units that get done, I don't have to design them all. I just want them designed. I think it's that important. And so making this available, what it does is, I read this great book by this author, Chippendale. Oh, Chip and Dan Heath, not Chippendale. So that was your husband, and I'm sorry. So Chip and Dan Heath wrote this great book, Made to Stick. Has anybody read that? So there's an acronym in there, and the acronym is SUCCESS. Simple, unexpected, concrete, credentialed, evocative, storied, and simple. I know it's like the 5 Ds of dodgeball. So yeah, simple, unexpected, concrete, credentialed, evocative, storied, and simple. So spell success. So we get a lot of people, anybody that's a design professional, you have someone that shows up and said, I want to do this community, and I want it to be all insulated concrete forms. I want it to be greener than green, and I want to put energy back onto the grid. And so we have this technology sort of thing, or I want this design to be, new age, something, something. And so they have one thing that they're really excited about. And what the SUCCESS acronym does, it helps me sort of, in a very polite way, say that you have to look at all this stuff. And that's what Livable Design does. We try to make it simple, unexpected, concrete. It's a credentialed program done, in conjunction with us and a 40-year-old not-for-profit, right? They have got credibility. It's evocative because when you see these bigger spaces, just a little bit bigger. Can you imagine a powder room where you can actually stand in there and close the door without hurting yourself, right? Where you can sort of walk outside without stubbing your toe on the threshold, where you can get in your shower and you don't have to worry about stubbing your toe or worse, tripping. And I'm not talking about older adults, I'm talking about me on a Saturday morning. So these are the things that go into this whole success model and what we try to kind of bring forward within this program. So I got a conclusion that I want to, but does anybody have any questions so far? How are we doing? Are you guys interested in this? Yes. Cool. I mean, what I wanted to do more than anything else is to show you that whether you're a provider of facilities, communities we call them now, for memory care, assisted living, independent living, that there's a different model that's out there, and it's not that hard to get to. And if you're a home builder and you're not looking at targeting for buyers that have mobility issues or some of these other things, this visitability requirement, one of the things that our state does an incredible job of is regulating things. What our lawmakers are really, really good at is they work so hard at getting their name on a bill because that's marketable to them. They can take that to their constituents and say, did you see that I was one of the authors of AB 199, universally loved by everyone in California because it's such a great idea, right? So they want to get their name on a bill. This notion of visitability, if we don't do this, if we don't make this part of our industry, then it's going to be foisted upon us. We saw it in Davis. Davis has been working on their visitability requirement for about 10 years, and then we go, oh, we've got it all figured out. It's called Livable Design, and they went for it because it's true. If we allow agencies to regulate this, what we'll end up with is ADA for residential, and it'll be ugly. What we don't want to do with these homes that we design is that we don't want to make people that have mobility issues, whether they're older adults or whether they're a young veteran that's come back from serving our country in a wheelchair. We don't want to make it look like there's things that make that person frail. So grab bars on the outside, ramps, and these egregious institutional-looking solutions that are slapped on. That's what we'll get from the agencies. And I can guarantee you that it will do what all regulation does. It'll cost a lot of money, and it'll be of dubious benefit because it's good for everyone. Everyone needs to experience this. So we can do it better, I guess is what I'm saying. Because, not to beat them up too badly, but they don't know how to do things like we do. They don't know how to be entrepreneurial. They don't need to know how to make money. They don't have to worry about how to pay for things. That's what we do. But we do, and we can. And that's what I think is so powerful about this message. So even Livable Design Light and making homes visitable by someone that has a mobility issue, or special needs, how accommodating is that? I'll go back to my grandmother. She was only 62 when she broke her hip. That's a year older than I am now. And her life was changed forever for the worse. And how much different would that be if she could be able to get around for herself independently? She would have been blessed, my family would have been blessed, and we'd all be better for it. Let me tell you one last story. We doing okay? You guys? Doing all right on time and everything? All right. You got time for one more story? All right. I grew up in Cornwall, New York, near West Point in the Mid-Hudson Valley, and when I was 7 years old, this cool guy moved in next door, and I did what all 7-year-old kids do. I went over and was obnoxious. So I met him, and his right hand, he was about 60 years old, his right hand was like this. And after about 5 minutes, I'm staring at his hand, and he goes, "You wonder what happened to my hand?" I go, "Oh, no." He goes, "Yeah, you are. I used to race midget cars, and the midget car rolled over on me during a race once, and it did some nerve damage, but I can still do my job." I'm like, "What's your job?" He goes, "Well, I'm an engineer on a train on the Hudson River line." And we used to see him going up and down the Hudson River when we went shopping in Newburgh, New York. He was the coolest guy ever. And this had more meaning when I became a teenager as opposed to when I first met him. He lived with 2 women. They were sisters. None of them were married. They all lived together, next door to us. It's a town of 5,000 people. By the time I was 13, I'm like, how did he do this? How did this work out? When I was 12 years old, he gave me my first shotgun, which every boy needs, right, when they're 12 years old, but that's how it was back then. Gave me my first shotgun. I love this guy. His 1964 Buick Riviera, which he bought brand new with a 465 horsepower Wildcat engine in it, that's the first car that I was in that went over 100 miles an hour, and he was driving it with one bad hand over here and just streaking along. He was the coolest guy ever. Every morning when I went to school with my sisters, we'd walk past his house, and he would sit there in the window in his kitchen, and he would wave. If I had just had a fight with my mom, my father, my sister, didn't matter. Mr. Wolford, at the end of the day, if I didn't have basketball practice or baseball practice, I'd stop by his house, and they spoiled me because they didn't have kids. And so when I was at home competing with my siblings, there's no way that I'm going to get special attention, right? Unless I did something wrong, which I did a lot. It's the only way I could get attention. So being the middle child is your cross to bear. So Mr. Wolford, I'd go over there, it was milk and cookies. They'd let me put my feet up on the couch and watch TV with them. And so I'd spend afternoons doing that. The Weeks sisters, these 2 sisters, they worked for the Vanderbilts. So over the years, I got to hear their stories and see the artwork in their house. They used to have trotters, the Vanderbilts. And so they had the Mid-Hudson School of Painting. They had all these paintings in the house that were done by the Mid-Hudson Valley School. And so the Weeks sisters, very soft-spoken, sweet ladies, believe it or not, this is going to shock everybody, they had cats. They had a lot of cats. And so I still don't like cats, by the way, at all. So, but I like the Weeks sisters. And they were just so sweet, and they were so cultured. And I have to say that a lot of who I am is a result of this. How many people here grew up in a neighborhood where you had older adults, and not the kind that scream, get off your grass, because the world is full of mean people, we don't want to remember them, but the nice kind? Did anybody have it? Right? So why would we not want to do that in the communities that we have now? That's the other thing that Livable Design does. It allows people of every generation to interact. That building that I showed you at Tualatin, this is how important this touch is and how we've kind of, we're working to bring it back into our society. That's what I believe in. We have a daycare center in that building that we did in Tualatin. It's for people, there's a bus stop there. There's a lot of, families that, single parent families that live in this area. It's daycare, it's free. And it's staffed by residents of the building. So people come in the morning and they drop their kids off and they know that they're going to be loved. And residents are fighting to get in there to take care of these kids. So that's, if we allow the politicians and the regulators to tell us how we should be doing our stuff, they'd be glad to do it. But I really think that we can do a better job. And I think that Livable Design is the catalyst for that conversation. My formerly youngest son, when he was about 10 years old, he said, Dad, you're spending a lot of time on this stuff. What are you doing? And I explained it to him. And he goes, okay, wider doors, plugs, outlets. He goes, wow, Dad, that's really great. Duh. And my pastor says it's not that hard to be remarkable. And that's what this, it's not that hard to be remarkable. All we did is we put it together. We answered all the questions that come up. And believe me, you can get to simple, but it is a lot of work to get to simple. And that's what we've tried to do, to simplify it and distill it and to make it viable. And then to tell the story, because everybody loves a story about how their neighborhood can be impacted, how their lives have been impacted. So that's what we love to do. So architects get a lot of attention in extremes. We get attention for over-designing stuff and making it too beautiful. And I gotta say that sometimes we do, and that's the only goal. At the other extreme, we make it too engineering-ish, right? We engineer stuff to within inches of his life and we forget the design. What Livable Design does is it gives us a different way to design. It gives us a reason to design. It gives us a platform to design. We can still do those things. We can do Livable Design at $1 million. We can do Livable Design at $150,000. But when you start with these core elements, then your home is always got those 3 things that I talked about. It's affordable, it's adaptable, and it's beautiful. So after doing this for 35 years, I recognized a few years ago there's a better way that we can bring design to the masses, and that's what Livable Design does. It's a better way to design, it's a better way to live, it's honoring to the people that we design for, and it allows families and neighborhoods and the fabric that this country was built on to get knitted back together again. And that's what I'm really interested in. So this represents change. You're going to go talk to your friends and constituents and, maybe the leaders of your organization, or maybe you are the leaders of your organization, because it represents change. And so this is a little something that I like to talk to people about that represents change. Change is scary. It's tough. It's not easy to get to. But if you don't like change, you're going to hate extinction. Thank you. If there's any questions, if we have time, great. If not, I'll